Hello and welcome to today's episode of the 15 Minute MMA Podcast with me, Jordan from Smash MMA. Today we're going to be talking through this weekend's UFC Fight Night card in London. We're also going to be touching upon the main talking points from Cage Warriors, also in London the day before the UFC came to town. And then we're going to touch a little bit on what we're going to be seeing from next weekend's fighting. So getting straight into it, and Leon Edwards facing Sean Brady in the main event of this card. Sean Brady getting the win by decision in the fourth round, and this was a hugely dominant performance from Sean Brady. He controlled the fight with his grappling. He did everything we expected him to do. He came to this fight, he grappled really strongly, he took Leon Edwards down numerous times, and Leon really struggled to get back to his feet, which is interesting really because that's always been a big strength for Leon Edwards. Even when he gets taken down, he's always got back up really well. But in this fight, it was a little bit different. I think massive credit to Sean Brady. I think a lot of people underestimated him before this fight. And I think, if I'm being completely honest, the negative opinion that a lot of people have around Belal, and Belal being the guy that had beaten Brady, I think made people underestimate how good Sean Brady is, because in that same ladder, a lot of people are underestimating just how good Belal Muhammad is. And I think that's followed through into Brady. He did everything that you expected and everything from that grappler's wrestler's playbook. He got numerous takedowns. He was very aggressive. He was moving forward really well. And yes, Leon landed a few shots here and there, but it was Sean Brady's fight, and he was completely dominant. So submission in the fourth round. Next for these guys, I think for Leon, it's probably going to be a case of going back to the drawing board now. He's two losses in a row to, albeit probably the best two welterweights in that division, but nevertheless, it's two losses in a row to two of the top guys. So I think he's going to need to go back and regroup. I'd quite like the idea of the Edwards-Masvidal fight that we were looking for years ago. That could be a good fight for Edwards. I do think he would piece Masvidal up, to be honest. It would be a car wreck for him. Leon should run through him, but it would be the perfect fight for Leon to try and get a little bit of confidence back. And there's a lot of history there that those two guys both don't like each other at all. So it creates a little bit of panto for us as well. So I think that'd be a good move for Edwards. For Sean Brady now, I think it's got to be a title shot. It's just got to be. I think the winner of the Belal Muhammad JDM fight in a couple of months against Brady would be, I think, the ideal scenario for me. And then you've got the option of a winner of that fight facing Shavkat when he's back next year. So I think that's the only real thing that you can do there, and I think he deserves it after that. Moving on now into the co-main, Carlos Ulberg facing Jan Blachowicz. And this one, I think, was... Ulberg got the win by decision. Personally, I didn't agree with this decision. Yes, there wasn't a lot going on in this fight. There wasn't a lot of back and forth. There wasn't a standout winner. But I just felt that Blachowicz did more. I think he controlled the centre of the cage. I think he put a lot more pressure on Ulberg. Ulberg landed more shots, but a lot of them were quite speculative. There wasn't a lot of damage done from them. It was almost throwing for throwing's sake, I think, a little bit from Ulberg, which I think if you watch back from a lot of his fights, there's quite a lot of volume, but not really a lot happening with any of the volume. So, a bit of an odd one. Gutted for Jan because he came back and he looked really good. He didn't look like a 42-year-old who'd had a couple of years off at all. And I'm not sure really where he goes from here. Blachowicz is going to want an Ulberg rematch. I think that goes without saying. That's what he's going to want from this. I can't see Carlos Ulberg wanting the same thing. He's going to be wanting to move another step closer to the belt. So, if I was a matchmaker, I'd probably be looking at Carlos Ulberg versus Khalil Roundtree. I think that'd be a good fight, and if Ulberg gets through Khalil, then maybe he's in that title conversation. That's where I'd go there. For Jan, I'd probably think about packing it in, to be honest, at this point. I don't think he's got anything else to prove. It's his 11th loss. He's done it all now. So for me, it'd be, get your feet up and sort of chill out a bit, Jan, because you've put a good graft in. Moving down the card, Kevin Holland taking on Gunnar Nelson. This one went the complete opposite way to what I expected. I was expecting Gunnar Nelson to grab hold of Holland and that to be all she wrote. And Kevin Holland shown that when he actually fancies it, he's very good at defensive grappling. He kept Gunnar at bay for the entire fight. There was a few instances where he landed takedowns, but even when they were on the ground, Holland was doing more damage from the bottom than Nelson was doing from the top. Very good performance from Kevin Holland, and back at 170, he just looks so much better. as opposed to 185, where I think facing grapplers, particularly at that weight, he sort of gets suffocated a little bit. But at 170, he put on a really good show. He was very, very good. And I think that there's definitely some fun fights for Kevin Holland to have at that division. I mean, when we were talking about Edwards, just if you're not going to do an Edwards Masvidal, I wouldn't mind an Edwards Kevin Holland. I think that'd be a pretty interesting fight, and it'd be a fun fight for the fans to watch. And something a bit more fun for both guys who've faced a lot of grapplers recently. So, it could be an interesting matchup. That's where I'd go with that one. Gunnar Nelson, I don't think we're going to see much more from him in the near future. We might get another appearance on like a European Fight Night card, but I think that's where we are with Nelson at this point in his career. Next fight down, it's probably the most exciting fight of the night for me. Nathaniel Wood defeated Morgan Charrier by decision. And Wood just looked really, really good. I've no clue why he was the underdog in this fight. His forward pressure's really good. His volume's really good. The leg kicks, which he threw consistently through this fight, are really good. And it's the combination, I think, of those three things that really show how good Nathaniel Wood is. I'd like to see now Wood maybe face off against someone in the top 15. I think at featherweight, I think that he deserves that after these 2 wins he's put together. He's still a very good prospect coming from the UK, and I think that it'd be good to see Wood get a real step up in competition next. Morgan Charrier, I don't think he's lost out too much from that fight. It wasn't a bad performance from him. Wood was just better, really. Everything Charrier did, Wood did a little bit better. So I think he'll go back and take another look at this one, but I think he'll be coming back before too long. And I think more fun fights for Charrier, more fights like this, because this was the best fight on this card. This card was pretty shit on the whole, but this fight was pretty good. So more of this from both guys, I think is the key message going forward. Next fight down, we've got Molly McCann losing to Alexia Tayanara by submission. Tayanara looked really good in this one, especially on short notice, and completely dominated the fight. Very good all-round fighter, very good grappler, and she just controlled Molly. I think it's a good performance. Her UFC debut proper after coming through on the Contender Series as well. So, she definitely did a stock no harm in that fight. Very good, and looking forward to seeing a lot more from her. I think she could be a good prospect in the strawweight. Molly retired after the fight, and I think this was quite a big thing. It was nice to see her get a proper send-off, to be honest, and be able to, talk to the local UK fans on her last appearance. And I think that as far as women's MMA goes, particularly in the UK, Molly McCann's been an absolute pioneer to the sport. She's the first English female fighter to get a win. That spinning back elbow, or the spinning back fist rather, that she dropped earlier in her career, if you haven't seen that, go and have a look, because it was an absolute fucking banger of a knockout. And that highlight reel fight, the character that she has, because she's a brilliant character in the sport. So hopefully there's a role made for Molly. I'd like to see her maybe even in an ambassadorial role. She'd be a damn sight more entertaining than half the people on those ESPN panels. So, something like that. We need to keep people like this in the sport. But massive thanks to Molly for everything that she's done for the fights I've watched and for the younger generation as well. Big star from the UK. Next on this card, and the last main card fight, and we've got Chris Duncan facing Jordan Vucenic. And this is one that killed a lot of people's bet slips. A lot of people expected Vucenic to just be too good in this fight against Duncan. But Chris Duncan, he don't fuck around, man. He come out with some fire in him. I think, initially, I'd looked at this fight and I thought Duncan's got a lot of power. But I couldn't see what else he brought to the table that would be too much for Vucenic. With Jordan being such a good all-rounder, his grappling's really good, both his defensive grappling and his grappling on top. He's got very good boxing and very good hands. I thought this would be a difficult fight for Chris Duncan, but he's came out and he's been obviously putting a lot of work into his wrestling, because his takedowns were 10 out of 10. He's took the fight to the ground and he's controlled it really, really well. Massively deserved win, and guillotine submission win, which is not something that we tend to see very often. So massive well done to Chris Duncan there. He's put on a very good performance, and I think he's another in this sort of new wave of lightweights that are coming through with a lot of potential. There's a lot of exciting fights at lightweight, so I'm really looking forward to seeing Chris get back at it. For Jordan, I mean, we've seen people cut for less, And I think hopefully this is not the case here, because he's definitely got a lot to show the world. I think he's just had two very difficult matchups that he's came into for his first two UFC fights. So I'm really hoping that Vucenic can go away, back to the drawing board, work on his game, and come back a lot stronger, because there's a lot of potential for him in the sport. But as I say, if he has to go back down, that might be the case. And if he does, then I'm sure Cage Warriors will welcome him back with open arms. And as we've seen with Mason Jones recently, there's nothing stopping someone that maybe has a bit of a rough time in their first appearances in the UFC, going away, building themselves back up and getting an opportunity that you could argue, in the case of Mason Jones, he's coming back to face a legend of the game. So, if that's the case, then I'm sure Vucenic has got it in him to pull off that big turnaround. So, fingers crossed for him. Moving on to the prelims and some of the notable fights there. Mick Parkin unfortunately losing his unbeaten run to Tabura. Very close fight. Tabura probably got it, but this is one of them weird ones where I think if this was in America and it was an American fighter, and that's in the same circumstances Mick Parkin was in this fight, then he'd have probably got the win. And it's a bit weird that these sorts of rules don't apply in the UK. We don't seem to have a slight bias towards our fighters, and this really showed, because this fight was close, and yeah, it probably did go to Tabura, but on another day, this goes the other way. So, unfortunate loss there for Parkin. Lauren Kavanagh with an absolutely superb win in his fight. Massive potential at flyweight, so he's definitely someone to keep your eyes on if you weren't aware of him already. I'll be honest, this wasn't a particularly great card. I didn't think it was. There's no knockouts, a couple of submissions, mostly decision finishes. It's not going to set the world alight, and everyone I'm hearing from people who were at the show talk about the atmosphere not being particularly that lively, so not the best all-round for a UK card, but it's not the first time this has happened. It's happened before, and it'll probably happen again. So not a great UFC card. Hopefully we can move on to something a little bit better next week. Cage Warriors, they held their 186 show on Friday night, and some big fights were on that card from the UK. You've got both Hardwicks defending their belts. So Harry Hardwick in the main event, he managed to successfully defend his belt against Javier Garcia in quite an unusual fight, to be perfectly honest. Harry dominant in this fight, pretty much consistently. A few accidental head clashes. I don't think they were anyone's fault in particular, but in the fourth round, it happened again, and Harry, to be honest, did look visibly concussed. He looked like he was having a rough time. Because it being the fourth round, it went to the judge's decision, and then every judge had every round scored to Harry Hardwick, so he took the belt. Wasn't particularly that pleased about it, but I guess that's not the way that you really want to be defending your title, by a stoppage due to a head clash, even if you did win every round. So, bit of a strange ending there, but Harry kept hold of his belt. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about George Hardwick. He lost in his lightweight title defence against short notice opponent Samuel Silva, who looked a lot like Anthony Smith's Brazilian little brother, to be honest. If you'd have told me they were related, I'd have believed you. He put on a cracking performance. It went to a decision. It was a pretty even fight, to be honest. It was pretty close. It probably could have gone either way, but I think that the right person probably won, Samuel Silva. And fair play to him, he's took the fight on a week's notice, so you can't knock him. A lot of people sniffing around that belt now. A particular favourite of mine, James Power, was sort of laying his claim to the title on Instagram. That would be an interesting fight for Silva if George isn't going to get a rematch. So we'll have to see how that pans out, but unfortunate that both Hardwicks couldn't defend their belts. They'd have made history if they did, as the first brothers to successfully defend their titles, but they are still the first brothers to defend their titles on the same show, so massive achievement to those boys. In other news on this card, Will Curry picked up another win by decision. We might remember Will from Dana White's Contender Series last year. He lost that fight, but he's actually, on the back of this win, being given another opportunity in the summer, so congratulations to him. We've got Nick Bagley picking up a decision win against a former title challenger, Coiny Lopez. I've spoke before about Nick Bagley, massive future in the lightweight division, and he's somebody else who I think could have an argument for a title shot at that lightweight belt now. Massive prospect, Nick. Yannick Bahati, who interestingly was defeated by Dricus Duplessis earlier in their careers, so an interesting fact for you there. He got a 5-second KO over Charles Joyner, and it was very unusual. That sort of touched gloves, and then before it was like the touch gloves, and he threw the overhand. But I mean, it's a little bit unsporting. But protect yourself at all times is the first thing the ref says every time anyone gets into the cage. So as much as I sort of understand why you would complain about that, at the same time, you're in a mixed martial arts fight, the bell's gone, you've got to keep your eyes peeled for that sort of thing. Finally, Oli Sawa got his 6th first round knockout, and this is another guy, this time at bantamweight, who could be in with a title opportunity, and this is someone I think we could be seeing in the UFC before too long. He's got a very exciting fighting style. He's a good defensive grappler, but he's got immense power in his hands, and he just comes out and throws. He's had 6 fights. Every single fight's ended by first round knockouts. How much further can this run go? I'm not sure, but I think Ollie is definitely someone who will be in those sort of title circles, I think, over the next few years, especially if he keeps his run going. So a massive performance from him. An all-round, a pretty good Cage Warriors card, to be perfectly honest. If I was going to tell you to watch either card from this weekend, I'd tell you to watch the Cage Warriors show. It was a lot more exciting than what the UFC gave us. So definitely a cracking card from those boys. Next week, we've got another UFC Fight Night card, and this is not a bad little card, so I'm going to run through this with you, but I am going to drop out a little bit later in the week, another episode of the 15-minute pod, and we're going to go through next week's card, and we're going to look at some sort of my own personal betting picks where I think the fights are going to go. But it's a good card. You've got Steve Erceg facing Brandon Moreno, so you've got a former champion against a former title contender. Drew Dober facing Manuel Torres. Drew Dober fights are generally pretty decent. They're usually worth watching, so that shouldn't be too bad. Calvin Gastelum against Joe Pfeiffer. You might remember Joe Pfeiffer is the guy who apparently has the most power. I think they were using like a punch machine in some media stuff, and Pfeiffer came out with a high score. So, albeit you can only look into that sort of thing so much, but guy's got hands, man. So definitely is a fun fighter to watch. And facing Kelvin Gastelum, who's another guy who's fun to watch, so that should be a cracking fight. And then rounding that card out, you've got Chihuihui's Raul Rosas Jr.'s back. He's facing Vince Morales. So, not a bad little card. And as I say, we'll go through all of that on the next video that will be dropping sometime in the midweek, like Wednesday, Thursday sort of time. We'll go through this card and we'll look at who I think is going to be taking the wins in this one. As usual, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. If you don't already, don't forget to hit that like button, drop us a subscribe on the channel. Catch you next week.